Friends, have you ever yearned for something so deeply, something you felt you deserved, only to have it snatched away because of something as superficial as the color of your skin? Have you ever felt that sting of injustice, that burning humiliation that makes your blood boil and your spirit ache? Perhaps you carry that pain even now. Well, today I'm going to share a story with you, a true story that will ignite those feelings within you once more. It's about a black woman, a woman with dreams as vast as the sky, who was denied a simple comfort, a first-class seat she had rightfully paid for. But what happened next, what she did next, will leave you absolutely speechless. They tried to demean her, to make her feel small, but little did they know, they had awakened a force, a storm of dignity and resilience that would make them beg for mercy. Let's dive in to see how this unfolded, shall we? Our story begins not in a grand boardroom or a bustling city center, but in the quiet anticipation of an airport terminal. A woman named Serafina clutched her boarding pass, her heart thrumming with a quiet excitement. This trip was a significant one for her, a culmination of years of hard work and sacrifice. She had treated herself to a first-class ticket, a small indulgence to mark this milestone. It wasn't just about the wider seat or the extra legroom. It was about feeling valued, respected, and seen, something she had worked tirelessly for. As she approached the gate, a wave of unease washed over her. The gate agent, a man with a dismissive air named Mr. Abernathy, barely made eye contact as he scanned her ticket. Then his brow furrowed, and a sigh escaped his lips, a sigh that felt heavy with unspoken judgment. "Ma'am," he began, his tone laced with a condescension that pricked at Serafina's composure, "there seems to be a discrepancy with your seat assignment." Serafina's excitement began to dissipate, replaced by a knot of apprehension in her stomach. "Discrepancy? I booked and paid for a first-class seat months ago." She held up her boarding pass, as if it were a shield against his dismissive gaze. Mr. Abernathy tapped on his computer screen, his expression unchanging. "Yes, well, there's been a system error, apparently. The first-class cabin is fully occupied." "Fully occupied?" Serafina looked around. The boarding process had barely begun. Suspicion, cold and sharp, began to creep into her mind. Had someone else, someone who looked different, been given her seat? "But I have a confirmed booking," she insisted, her voice trembling slightly. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm afraid," Mr. Abernathy said, his eyes finally meeting hers, but without a hint of empathy, "that the only seat available for you is in the back, in economy." The words hit Serafina like a physical blow. Humiliation washed over her, hot and stinging. It wasn't just about the seat. It was about the blatant disregard, the implicit message that her comfort, her rights, somehow mattered less. The other passengers, beginning to line up, cast curious glances their way. Serafina felt their eyes on her, a mixture of pity and awkwardness, and the shame deepened. "This is unacceptable," she stated, her voice now firm despite the tremor within. "I paid for a first-class seat. I expect to sit in first class." Mr. Abernathy remained impassive. "I understand your frustration, ma'am, but there's nothing I can do. These things happen." His tone suggested that these things happen to people like her, and that she should simply accept it. But Serafina was not one to be easily dismissed. Years of navigating a world that often tried to diminish her had forged in her a steely resolve. This wasn't just about a seat on a plane. It was about standing up for herself, for her dignity, for every person who had ever been made to feel less. "No," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "These things shouldn't happen, and I will not simply accept this." She refused to move, standing her ground at the gate, a solitary figure of defiance against the indifferent machinery of the airline. Other passengers began to murmur, their impatience growing, but some also watched with a flicker of understanding in their eyes. They had seen this happen before, the subtle and not-so-subtle ways in which some people were treated differently. Seeing that Serafina was not going to back down, Mr. Abernathy reluctantly called a supervisor. A woman named Ms. Albright arrived, her expression tight with annoyance at the delay. "What's the problem here, Mr. Abernathy?" she asked, her gaze sweeping over Serafina with a hint of irritation. "This passenger is refusing to take her assigned seat in economy," he explained, his tone implying that Serafina was being unreasonable. Ms. Albright turned to Serafina, her voice sharp. "Ma'am, you need to proceed to economy. The flight is boarding." "I have a first-class ticket," Serafina repeated, her voice calm but unwavering. "I want the seat I paid for." "There's been a mistake," Ms. Albright said, her tone dismissive. "We can offer you a voucher for a future upgrade." A voucher. A flimsy piece of paper in exchange for the humiliation she was feeling, the injustice she was experiencing. It wasn't about the money, it was about the principle. "A voucher is not acceptable," Serafina replied. "I want my seat. Now." The standoff continued, a small but significant battle being waged in the sterile environment of the airport gate. Other passengers were now openly watching, some with sympathy, others with growing frustration. The tension in the air was thick and palpable. Just when it seemed the situation might escalate, a young black woman, another passenger waiting to board, stepped forward. Her name was Imani, and she had been watching the exchange with growing anger. "Excuse me," Imani said, her voice clear and strong. "I heard what happened. This woman has a first-class ticket. You need to honor it." More passengers began to voice their support for Serafina, their murmurs of agreement growing louder. The airline staff, visibly flustered by the unexpected solidarity, exchanged uneasy glances. Ms. Albright, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, tried a different tactic. "Ma'am," she said to Serafina, her tone now falsely sympathetic, "we understand your disappointment, but the flight is full. There's simply no first-class seat available." Suspicion gnawed at Serafina. Full? How could it be full when boarding had just begun? She decided to call their bluff. "Then," Serafina said, her voice ringing with newfound determination, "I will wait here until a first-class seat becomes available. I have nowhere else to be." Her words hung in the air, a challenge to the airline's authority. The other passengers, witnessing her unwavering resolve, began to applaud. The sound echoed through the gate area, a powerful testament to the injustice they had all silently witnessed at some point. Ms. Albright's face flushed with anger. She knew this was spiraling out of control. The delay was mounting, and the passengers were clearly on Serafina's side. She had no choice but to investigate further. After a tense few minutes, Ms. Albright returned, her demeanor noticeably different. Her eyes avoided Serafina's as she spoke. "Ma'am," she mumbled, "it appears there was a misunderstanding. A passenger with a lower booking class was mistakenly assigned your seat. We have rectified the error." A misunderstanding? Serafina knew that wasn't the whole truth. But the flicker of shame in Ms. Albright's eyes, the mumbled apology, spoke volumes. The pressure from the other passengers had forced their hand. "I expect to be escorted to my rightful seat immediately," Serafina said, her voice still firm, but now laced with a quiet sense of victory. As Serafina was finally led to the first-class cabin, the other passengers applauded again, their faces beaming with satisfaction. Imani gave Serafina a warm smile, a silent acknowledgement of their shared understanding. As Serafina settled into her comfortable seat, the initial anger began to subside, replaced by a profound sense of weariness. It shouldn't have been this hard. She shouldn't have had to fight so fiercely for something she had rightfully paid for. The experience had left a bitter taste in her mouth, a stark reminder of the subtle and insidious ways in which prejudice could manifest. But amidst the weariness, a spark of defiance remained. She had stood her ground. She had refused to be silenced. And in doing so, she had not only secured her rightful seat, but had also inspired others to speak up against injustice. The flight attendants, now overly solicitous, offered her drinks and snacks, their earlier indifference replaced by an almost obsequious politeness. Serafina accepted their offerings with a curt nod, her mind already turning to what she would do next. This wasn't the end of the story. The airline needed to understand that such blatant disrespect would not be tolerated. Upon landing, Serafina immediately filed a formal complaint, detailing her experience and the dismissive behavior of the airline staff. She also shared her story on social media, her post quickly going viral. People from all walks of life, recognizing the injustice of her treatment, rallied behind her, sharing their own experiences and demanding accountability from the airline. The airline, initially dismissive, was soon facing a public relations nightmare. The hashtag Justice for Serafina trended worldwide, and calls for boycotts began to circulate. The pressure mounted, and the airline was forced to issue a public apology, promising a full investigation and disciplinary action against the staff involved. But Serafina wasn't satisfied with just an apology. She demanded systemic change, mandatory sensitivity training for all airline staff, and a clear commitment to treating all passengers with dignity and respect, regardless of their race or background. The airline, desperate to salvage its reputation, agreed to her demands. They implemented new training programs, reviewed their booking procedures, and reached out to Serafina to offer a personal apology and compensation. But for Serafina, the victory was not about the compensation or the apology. It was about the change she had helped to bring about, the awareness she had raised. It was about knowing that her voice, her refusal to be silenced, had made a difference. And so, my friends, Serafina's story serves as a powerful reminder. A reminder that our desires for respect and dignity are not too much to ask. A reminder that our fears of injustice are valid and real. A reminder that even in the face of blatant prejudice, our voices have power. A reminder that our pain, when channeled into action, can become a catalyst for change. And a reminder that our suspicions, when rooted in truth, can unravel even the most carefully constructed facades of discrimination. What are your thoughts on Serafina's experience? Have you ever faced a similar situation where you felt unfairly treated? Share your experiences in the comments below. And please, let us know where in the world you're watching from. It's always inspiring to see the global reach of our shared humanity. If you found this story impactful, please give it a thumbs up before you go. Your support means the world. This story, the story of resilience and the fight for dignity, is for each and every one of you. Remember, even when the world tries to push you back, your worth is immeasurable. Never let anyone dim your light. Stand tall, speak your truth, and know that you are not alone. The fight for justice continues, and every voice, every act of defiance, brings us closer to a world where everyone is treated with the respect and dignity they deserve. The moral of the story, my friends, is this: never underestimate the power of one person to stand up against injustice. Your voice matters, your experiences are valid, and your refusal to be silenced can spark a movement that leads to meaningful change. Always fight for what is right, even when it seems difficult, for in doing so, you not only uplift yourself, but also pave the way for a more just and equitable world for all.